Hello everyone, and welcome to the Moony Movie Show. On our last video, we talked about 5 of the Best Picture nominees this year coming up on the Oscars on Sunday. Today, we're going to talk about our next 5. We're going to wrap this series up. I'm a big fan of the 5 movies we have to talk about today, so I don't want to delay that any further. Let's go ahead and jump into it. We're going to get this kicked off by talking about Wicked, starring Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. Alternative take on The Wizard of Oz from the Wicked Witch's perspective. Very obviously adapted from the famous Broadway play, which was adapted from a book, which was adapted from the original book. This is the epitome of an adaptation. Don't even get me started on that infinite rabbit hole that is. So Wicked was kind of an interesting movie for me because I didn't think I was going to like it, which is really odd because I love musicals. I didn't most of my life, but near the end of my senior year, I got really into Les Mis and Jonathan Larson and the Broadway stuff. I got really into the Broadway stuff. For whatever reason, just a switch was flipped in my brain and I got really into it. Mostly through movie adaptations of Broadway plays and or like really high quality recordings of Broadway plays because I don't live anywhere near a Broadway production. So movies was really my avenue for that type of media, which I think is perfectly acceptable. Not everybody lives near Broadway. So if your main exposure to musicals is through recordings and or film adaptations, I think that's perfectly fine. That's certainly the case with me. Either way, Wicked, we're here to talk about Wicked. Moving on from that. For reasons that are absolutely beyond me, I wasn't excited for Wicked. They played the TV ads on a constant loop. I remember when I was watching the Olympics, there was an ad for Wicked every 30 seconds. I wasn't super hyped for it, and I honestly think that the overexposure to the marketing was really the main culprit. I didn't want to see it almost out of spite because I was too overexposed to promotional material for it. And not only that, Wicked has a very die-hard fan base that, while that is a good thing, can sometimes be annoying. I think that anytime there's something that's super popular that has a very diehard fan base and sometimes a very vocal fan base, that can kind of push away anybody who's even remotely interested in checking out that media, whatever it may be. Star Wars, for example, is a big one of that. There are people who haven't seen Star Wars and they see Star Wars fans and they're like, yeah, I don't really feel like checking that out. Same thing with Wicked for me. There was a lot of people that just were die-hard Wicked fans, and that just kind of pushed me away of like, I don't know if that's really for me. I don't know. Something about that fan base kind of pushes me away a bit. So I was really hesitant going into this movie. I was proven wrong in the most wonderful fashion. I loved it. It's funny, it's charming, the music is great. Cynthia Erivo has an otherworldly voice. Her vocal talent is beyond belief, and the songs were amazing. Like I said, I love musicals, so it wasn't too hard of a sell for me. I am one of the very few people on this planet who managed to avoid listening to any of the music before watching the movie. I know that the Broadway play has a very famous album recording of the play that everyone listens to. I managed to avoid it, thank God, because this was my first exposure really to the music in this movie, with the exception of the ads and stuff. I'm very happy I managed to avoid it because I absolutely loved the music and I've been listening to it since the movie came out and since I saw the movie. Other than the music, this movie also shines in a variety of other categories, particularly in the setting and the way the movie feels. It's really hard with something like Oz. It's a very historic setting, obviously, with the classic Wizard of Oz movie. People have attempted it before, with Sam Raimi making that Oz the Great and Powerful movie several years ago. I don't remember how long ago now. But Oz has a very particular, odd, fantastical feel that's hard to nail. And I do think that Wicked does nail it. I think it does a great job at adapting that fantastical land and gives you the feel that you're in a land where nothing quite makes sense, but it does, and there's a lot of color. It's great. They nail it. Also, Ariana Grande's performance, I was so nervous about going into this because the only exposure that I had ever really had to her was when I was a kid and she was on Nickelodeon, and obviously she wasn't exactly winning any Oscars back then. So I was very nervous going into this movie of like, okay, what capabilities does Ariana Grande really have to bring to the table here? Was she just hired on for her voice? No, she does great. She really is an actress and a very good one at that. So yeah, just to keep things short and sweet, I say as we approach the 5-minute mark, the movie's great. I loved it. I wasn't expecting to love it, and I think that helps with how much I did. Great movie. It's appropriate for everyone. I think everyone should watch it. This isn't like some of the other movies we've talked about on this series where it's very art housey and not everyone is going to enjoy it. No, I think everyone would get a kick out of Wicked. Go check it out. Love to see it. All right, the next one I want to talk about is A Complete Unknown. It's a musical biopic showing the legendary rise of the artist and songwriter Bob Dylan, played by Timothée Chalamet. This movie's great. I was expecting it to be great. I'm a huge James Mangold fan. He has proven once again that he's a masterclass filmmaker. He made movies such as Logan, Ford vs. Ferrari, 3:10 to Yuma, etc. He's one of my favorites, and he kills it in this movie. And Timothée Chalamet is a beast of an actor. This movie just pushes him further into the conversation of one of the greats of his generation. He perfectly embodies Bob Dylan in this role, and many times while watching it, I completely forgot it was Timothée Chalamet. There's a scene specifically near the end, the final performance of the movie, where they do the lighting just right, and I'm like, wait a minute, did they CGI Bob Dylan's face onto him? Not the case. He just does a fantastic job. He does all the vocals in this movie, and somehow, with Bob Dylan's very unique voice, Timothée Chalamet manages to mimic it perfectly. He does a great job. It's not very surprising to me that he's up for Best Actor this year. I don't know if he's going to win it. Him winning SAG last week does kind of give him an extra little push, but we'll see. We'll see. Ed Norton is in this movie. He's also great, but what do you want me to say there? Ed Norton's in a movie and he's great. Shocking. Other breaking news, water wet. A very surprise stealing of the show that I was not expecting is Boyd Holbrook in this movie as Johnny Cash. So great. Really did steal the show. I wanted so much more of Johnny Cash in this movie. And by the end of it, I was like, man, James Mangold needs to make a Johnny Cash biopic. Oh shit. He already did. Whatever. Moving on. Movie's great. Recommended to everybody. Another one of those that I don't think is too art housey for just anybody. I think anybody could watch this and have a great time. Highly recommend it. I have one complaint, and that's Elle Fanning's character. I just think she's kind of one note. She shows up, falls in love with Bob Dylan, sees his success and his chemistry with Monica Barbaro's character. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. And then she just gets angry and storms off. And then that happens 3 more times in the movie. And that's all Elle Fanning's character really does. That is my one complaint about this movie. That got old. But one complaint, not a bad batting average if you ask me. Great movie. If you haven't seen it, go see it. If you like Bob Dylan or not, honestly, I think even if you don't like Bob Dylan, this might be a good movie for you to watch. All right, let's move on to Nickel Boys. Nickel Boys is a story about 2 boys in this juvenile kind of child prison in the 1960s. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this movie because it did kind of leave me speechless. It's a really good movie, but it's very hard-hitting. It's also shot in first-person perspective, which can be a lot for a lot of people. It's hard to watch an almost 3-hour movie in first-person point of view. People get motion sickness or they just don't like the style. It's hard to get through if that's not your taste. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone. It is also one of those art housey films that I don't think is for the general audience. Not everyone's gonna like this if you're not really into cinema. So there's your forewarning if you're looking to go see this movie. But other than that, it's great. The 2 actors in it, I don't know their names. Didn't look them up. My mistake. Oh well. The record button's on. I'm not moving back. They're great. They're both great in it. The story is heartbreaking. It breaks your heart over and over again. And there's an incredible twist at the end that left my jaw hanging open. It's a great movie, very art house, very slow paced, shot in first person. Like some of the movies I said in my earlier video, it's just not suitable for a general movie-going audience. But if you want to give it a shot, I would recommend it. Know what you're getting into ahead of time. Prepare to be heartbroken and wrecked emotionally. But it is a very good movie. I see why it's nominated this year, but I wouldn't recommend it to just everybody. All right, rant time. Time for everyone to get prepared for a rant because this movie pissed me off. Not because of the movie. The movie, I don't know. I can't commentate on it because I didn't see it. This movie only had showings late mornings and early afternoons on weekdays in my area. It's not available to rent or to buy. If you're wondering why, it's because this movie shouldn't be nominated for this year's Oscars. Yes, it hopped around film festivals last year, and that technically broke the seal of its qualifications that it needed to be nominated for this year's Oscars. But this movie didn't even get a limited release until January this year. It didn't get a wide release until just a couple days ago. No one's had the chance to even really see this movie if you weren't going to some crazy expensive film festivals. The Oscars have always been and will remain to be a very big deal to me. I watch all 10 Best Picture nominees every year and have for the past 5 years and intend to do it as long as I'm able to watch movies. But this might be the year that I have to miss out on one, no matter how badly I tried to see it, because the distributors botched the release of this movie. And that's why I think something needs to change in the distribution of some of these art house films that are up for big awards. Distributors of art house movies need to be more aware when a movie is up for awards, it needs to be taken into consideration that the only time that most people are ever going to watch this movie is right before the Oscars, because that's the short window of time that anybody really cares about these movies. If you want people to watch your movie, make sure it is accessible as possible when it comes time to the short window of which people are going to want to watch it. I'm not saying it should have been able to rent the movie for $1, because I get you kind of lose money that way, but the show times for this movie, in my area at least, were almost impossible to get to. And even if I wanted to be like, screw it, I'll pay $20 to watch it from home, I didn't have that option either. It was absolutely ridiculous. I have a strong anti-piracy moral code. I think piracy, especially for smaller films, can be devastating. I've watched as people I followed make independent films, and piracy ruined their financial status because they put so much of their own personal money into this movie, hoping they'd make it back, and then it was pirated and they lost so much money. So I've seen the devastation that piracy can have on independent filmmakers. And so in my heart, I've always been so against piracy. This movie actually made me question that. I've wanted to see this movie for a couple weeks now, and I had no real chance to. So I broke my code. I texted a few people I know to see, hey, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm actively trying to pirate this movie. Even then, it was still impossible, but I'm almost glad that was, because I like to stick to my moral code that's against piracy. But the fact that I would even consider piracy, as against it as I am, that I would even consider it to watch this movie, it really shows the big problem here. Whatever, I'm done ranting. Let's get on to the other stuff I like. Let's talk about the stuff I like. That's what I want this channel to be about, damn it. We're talking about things I like. Okay, we're gonna calm down. We're gonna calm down because it's important that we calm down, because now I'm gonna talk about something I love. I'm gonna talk about the main event, the best movie this year, the best movie of the past several years, Dune Part 2. All right, I'll pump the brakes a little bit on the drama, but only a little bit, because this movie does deserve a little bit of drama. In my opinion, it's not only the best movie of 2024, it might be the best movie that's come out in the last 10 years. I love Dune 1 so much, and I eagerly awaited the release of Dune 2. I sat and waited for years, and I was nervous that I was getting my hopes up too high. I didn't, because it lived up to the hype, and then some. As I mentioned earlier, Timothée Chalamet is becoming one of the greatest actors alive today, and he's only 29 years old. This movie showcases the range that this actor has. He's fantastic, and if he keeps at this pace, he's gonna go down in the conversation of greatest actor of all time. He's phenomenal. This movie's a must-watch. Even if you're just a fan of Timothée Chalamet, you have to watch this movie, and I'm sure that's probably the reason that a lot of people did. He's amazing. But you know who else is amazing? The GOAT, Denis Villeneuve. I've always said that the day that Steven Spielberg, the greatest filmmaker of all time, the day he passes, God willing a long time from now, the torch is going to be passed to Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan will then become the greatest filmmaker alive. Denis Villeneuve is the only one who could challenge that. I mean, just look at the streak this guy has been on in the last 10 years alone. Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, Dune Part 1, Dune Part 2. This dude is just hitting homers, one after the other. Very few filmmakers can sell me on a movie solely on the fact that they're the ones making it. The list was very short before, but Denis Villeneuve is added on that list. If I know he's making a movie, I don't even need to know what the movie is about. him being the one making it is all I need to know. I'm interested. I want to watch it. Dune Part 2 is absolutely no exception. For other movies on this list, I've at least given you a tad bit of the plot so you get an idea of what the movie's about. I'm not going to do that for this one. I think you just need to go and watch it and find out for yourself. If you have no idea what Dune is about, I will give you the tidbits of information that I had going into the first Dune, which is that Dune, the original novel by Frank Herbert, is a pinnacle of American literature and it has served as inspiration for many stories that you probably already know, but you didn't know had inspiration from Dune. The most notable being Star Wars. When Star Wars first came out, Frank Herbert was even quoted saying, "I'm going to try really hard not to sue," because there are very weird similarities between the two. In fact, if you're really knowledgeable about your Star Wars lore, you know there's just absolutely no way that George Lucas just came up with a lot of that stuff. He got a lot of it from Dune. So hopefully that is enough to at least pique your interest a little bit, because Dune 1 and Dune 2, which I do think are required back-to-back viewing, they are two halves of one mega film. And the mega film is a masterclass of storytelling, world building, and Shakespearean level drama. To simplify it to the common man, I would call it Game of Thrones in space. But I'm not even sure that really does it justice, because it's more than that. It's unbelievable levels of storytelling. I haven't really been exposed to a story that has captured my attention and imagination and my emotion quite like this story has, and I understand why it's as beloved as it is now. However, the reason we're covering it is because it's up for Best Picture, and I don't think it stands a chance. I don't think Dune 2 walks away with a whole bunch of awards this year, and it's not because of the movie. Recency bias is very much a thing in any kind of polling. Oscars and the Academy's voting for the Oscars is absolutely no exception. Oscar movies typically come out in August to December, somewhere in that area, because the recency bias is a thing. Movies that come out in the earlier half of the year get forgotten because so many other movies come out and voters are exposed to other great films. If this movie had come out in October or November, I think we'd be seeing a Dune 2 sweep this year. But sadly, it came out in March. There's been so much come out since then. People have had time to kind of relax from the hype a bit, and other great movies have come out. Like I said, recency bias. It sucks. It really sucks, because I think this movie deserves all of them this year, but I don't think it's gonna get it. I'd be very happy if Dune 2 walks away with like 2 or 3 Oscars this year, but I'm crossing fingers and toes that happens. I don't even really think that's going to happen. I wish that wasn't the reality, but it's just the world we're living in. It doesn't take away from the fact that this movie is masterful. If you still haven't seen Dune Part 1 or Dune Part 2, the second you get the chance, you have time to sit down for 5 to 6 hours. You got nothing really planned. Dune Part 1, Dune Part 2, back to back. Put your phone away, put all distractions away, shut off all the lights, and just immerse yourself into this grand story. It's worth it. Well, guys, sadly, I think that does bring a wrap to our short reviews for all 10 Best Picture nominees. I'm really happy I was able to do this. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I finally have an avenue to get it done. I'm loving doing this. I hope you guys are enjoying. Like I've said before, this is the Moony Movie Show on the Blue Water Windmill channel. Blue Water Windmill is a project with me and Ethan. We're loving doing this. We're having a whole lot of fun. Go check us out. We're really hoping we can keep doing this and have fun while we're doing it. So with that being said, to close us out, this has been the Moony Movie Show. Have a good one.